The easiest thing for them to do would be if they made one of those trades. You say, yeah, we thought Jalen was the starting quarterback, but we didn't know this opportunity was there. So I think they protected themselves, but I don't think they were deceiving the media or deceiving the public. I do think they're going into the offseason with the plan of Jalen Hurts as their quarterback.
And we're going to talk about that with Zach Berman. I see him popping up in the background.
There's
our
is,
buddy
Mr.
from the
Mr.
Athletic
himself with the outstanding book drop behind him. Zach Berman joins us here on Birds 365. All right, you just jumping in to the quarterback conversation. Was the number one topic of conversation when you guys met with Howie and with Nick yesterday. I thought slightly more than I thought we were going to get an affirmation of Jalen Hurts. I'm not saying they slammed the door, as John just pointed out. That's smart. They're too smart not to do that. But they didn't leave it open wide. They left it open a little bit of a crack. We all had our expectations of what they were going to say prior to them saying it yesterday. Zach, were you surprised at all by the strength of their belief that Jalen Hurts is going to be their guy come 2022?
Well, first off, I like your backdrops, right? I mean, it's pretty cold and wet here in Philly. So
yes.
Yeah, so being on the beach would be appealing. To answer your question, I wouldn't say I was surprised. I would say that like John said, they are leaving that door open a crack. I mean, if Russell Wilson is available to them, if Russell Wilson wanted to come to Philly and they were able to land him, they're not hanging up the phone. That said, I think that they have a good sense of what the market is going to be. I don't think they're going into this offseason saying, all right, we need to get the best quarterback we can get. I think they know what the options are. And frankly, the alternatives probably aren't the realistic alternatives, that is, probably aren't more appealing than Jalen Hurts. I don't think any of the quarterbacks in this draft are the types of quarterbacks where you would unseat Jalen Hurts and make that 3-year commitment that you would to a first-round pick. Now, there are veterans available, but they don't know. I think they have an idea of what that marketplace is going to be, and the odds are more in favor of them going to Jalen Hurts than them making that type of blockbuster trade. The easiest thing for them to do would be if they made one of those trades. You say, yeah, we thought Jalen was the starting quarterback, but we didn't know this opportunity was there. So I think they protected themselves, but I don't think they were deceiving the media or deceiving the public. I do think they're going into the offseason with the plan of Jalen Hurts as their quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, Zach. And I do give both Howie and Nick Sirianni credit for being savvy enough to leave those doors open. In Nick's case, I want to talk about the assistant coaches because we know Jeffrey Lurie's recent history with assistant coaches. 31 teams out of 32 ultimately is going to be unhappy at the end of their season. Somebody might have to pay for that. It's probably not fair, an scapegoating type issue, but I think Nick did a good job of saying, I love my guys. I want them all back, but I haven't met with Jeffrey Lurie yet. I've only been through a few of my evaluations. Other than Jonathan Gannon, who has some head coaching interviews, he'll finish up, I think, with Minnesota today. It already interviewed with Houston and Denver. If he's back, do you see any changes on that coaching staff?
Well, most years that I've covered the Eagles here, this is my 10th season covering the Eagles. Most year there are staff changes, whether minor or major, but staff changes. And in particular, when you look at new head coaches, you see some revisions to that staff going into year 2. Sometimes it's because of opportunities elsewhere for coaches. Other times it's because you see what your staff looks like in practice and you want to make those changes. So it wouldn't surprise me if there are 1 or 2 changes here. I don't expect any seismic changes. I know that there's There's fan angst about Jonathan Gannon. We can argue that it's misguided, but I can't foresee a defensive coordinator change unless Jonathan Gannon gets a head coaching job elsewhere.
All right. One of the things I always enjoy doing, and you guys actually do it, I'm a voyeur. I just sit back and watch and try and analyze and or pick it apart afterwards, is where would I throw the BS flag? And I would have thrown one on Howie yesterday when he said from the time that he started in his position as general manager, had a Hall of Fame coach, Andy Reid, and the draft was an extension of the relationship between Andy Reid and Howie Roseman. And he made it sound like this is what we've still got going here in Philadelphia. Do you really believe Nick Sirianni, Jonathan Gannon, whoever else is still on his coaching staff is going to guide Howie Roseman through the draft? Or Howie Roseman is going to do what Howie Roseman wants, and he's going to expect the coaching staff to make it work?
Well, no, I actually do believe that Howie makes picks based on how he thinks the staff will use the player. That doesn't mean that there's agreement entirely between the scouting staff and the coaching staff, between the GM, the coach, between the analytics department, and there's a lot of different voices there. But I don't think Howie's taking a player that doesn't fit in the coaching staff scheme and says, make it work, right? So I do believe Howie when he says, you're drafting the players for the coaching staff to use them. And that is the case. Now, there's a lot that goes beyond simply scheme, right? And coaches have preferences in terms of traits that the scouting staff or the front office or the analytics staff might disagree on. So I think that what Howie said is accurate, but I do think there's nuance there. And the other thing I'll tell you, and I know this anecdotally and factually from covering the team, is there's not always agreement among the coaching staff. There's times that the coordinator wants a player, but the position coach doesn't want him. Or there's a time that the head coach wants a player, but someone else on the staff doesn't have a use for him. So, the thing I can't emphasize enough, especially during the draft, is it's never one uniform pick. There's always a collection of voices. And when the pick doesn't work out, that's when you hear those voices more.
Yeah, perfect example on draft night was Tom Donahoe and Jonathan Gannon about Milton Williams. JG was really excited about that. Looked like Tom wanted to go in a different direction, but that happens in every draft room in every city, and I think fans need to understand that. So Zach is correct there. I do want to shift towards some of the players. We got a little bit more certainty when it came to Brandon Graham. It certainly looks like he's going to be back. I don't think that surprises many people. Brandon Brooks, though, still some uncertainty, Zach. And I think that's an interesting dichotomy because, we've seen Brandon a lot. Brandon is a constant at the NovaCare complex. I don't know about you. I haven't seen Brandon Brooks since he was injured, kind of recessed to the background. I was trying to go through it chronologically. I think it was torn Achilles, dislocated shoulder, torn Achilles, then the pec injury. A lot of rehabbing over the past couple of years. You think that's worn on Brandon Brooks? You think he even wants to play? And is he a fit for the Eagles if he does want to play?
Well, to the first part, I can't speak for Brandon because I haven't spoken to Brandon here. And similar to you, I haven't seen him around. I've seen him on the sideline at games, but I haven't spoken to Brandon since the summer. So I don't know where his head is at there. From just a football perspective and a team building perspective, he's played 2 games in the past 2 seasons, and he's ended the last 4 years with injuries. So it's hard to count on that player being your starting guard next season when he's played 2 games in 2 years. Now, we all know when Brandon Brooks is on the field, he's one of the best players in the NFL, frankly. And he's been able to come back from injuries before. But when you look at that cap number and you just look at it from an availability perspective, it would surprise me if he's the starting right guard next year. And I could be wrong there. And, like the Eagles said, it was very important for Brandon to get to the offseason healthy. He hasn't had a healthy offseason here the past 3 years. He's been rehabbing every time. So I can understand it from that perspective. And that's someone who I wouldn't count out from, a physical perspective there. But I'm just saying if I was in Howie Roseman's seat and I'm planning my roster, it's hard to plan around someone who's played 2 games in 2 seasons.
All right, I know it's all about the O-line, but I'm going to take a chance and move to the extremities here. You see Quez Watkins is one of the top wide receiver 2s in the league? Because Nick did yesterday, said he thought he could achieve that kind of status. I think he'd kind of be down the list of wide receiver 2s, not even 3s, 2 for Quez Watkins. Sorry about that, Jalen Reagor. They seem to have a lot of faith in him. Are we to believe they're not going to try and upgrade wide receiver this offseason?
No, I would expect them to try to upgrade a wide receiver this offseason in the free agency market more than the draft market. I know that there are mock drafts out there that have the Eagles taking a wide receiver in the first round. I could be wrong. It would surprise me if they spent 3 consecutive first-round picks on wide receivers. I know they have 3 picks this year, but they do it in 1920. I'm sorry, they do it in 2021 and 22 with a second-round pick in 19. I just think from a resource allocation, that's not the way to go. I think more likely you'll see them get into the free agency market, similar to what you saw in 2017 when they had a young wide receiver core and they went out. They signed Alshon Jeffrey that year to a 1-year deal. They brought in Torrey Smith. I don't know if they'll add 2, but I think when you look at some of it's a strong wide receiver free agency class. I think there could be some guys looking for 1-year show-me deals. And I think the number 2 receiver next year will come via free agency. What I found more noteworthy yesterday from what Sirianni was saying in that answer was a clear pecking order with Quez Watkins number 2,
I was surprised by that.
Reagor number 3. That's not the way it was going into the year. It's clearly the way it is coming out of the year. And the other thing I'll add to that is when you look at Jalen Reagor, if he's the clear number 3 right now and the Eagles add a veteran wide receiver, then he goes in the camp competing to be the number 4 guy, and that guy's not guaranteed a roster spot. So it's going to be a fascinating few months for Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up there, Zach. How surprised were you that it was so clearly defined? And you kind of gave it there. Wide receiver 2 for Quez Watkins, wide receiver 3 for Jalen Reagor. And Howie was pretty honest, just saying they expected more out of Jalen Reagor at this point in his career, which is obvious to those on the outside, but sometimes that's difficult for a GM who picked the guy and it's on his resume to admit something like that. You think that's a positive? You think as a reclamation project, there's even any hope for Jalen Reagor at this point with the Philadelphia Eagles? The kid's got talent, I mean, but it could be a change of scenery situation.
No, you're right about that. And I did think the comments were noteworthy. You can't brush them off. The most apt comparison I could give is Nelson Aguilar's first 2 years were worse than Jalen Reagor's first 2 years. And going into year 3, like I said, the Eagles made changes, pushed Aguilar down the depth chart, but the conversation was different. Internally, what I kept hearing about Nelson Aguilar then was this guy does everything the right way. He's working hard. We believe there's talent there. We're not giving up on him, and in that example, Nelson Aguilar looked outstanding during the spring, looked outstanding during the summer, to the point that the Eagles traded Jordan Matthews because they needed to get a spot on the field for Nelson Aguilar. They had signed Alshon, they had signed Torrey. So Nelson Aguilar moved down to 4th on the depth chart, like we were talking about with Jalen Reagor, and they had to get him on the field. Perhaps that happens with Jalen Reagor this offseason. But like I said, the conversation is different. And the other example we could use is Danny Watkins, who first-round pick, 2 years with the team, did not establish himself. They were disappointed in a lot of aspects of that behind the scenes, and they cut him going into year 3. So really, those are the 2 paths here. It could be the light bulb finally clicks, or they move on, or they try to do a change of scenery trade, our disappointment for your disappointment, that type of thing. But it was noteworthy to me that they were that outspoken about the fact that it hasn't worked out so far.
Do you think Quez Watkins ever says, hey, at least I'm not Danny. I'm number 2. That's pretty good out of the Watkins comparison. That is.
I'd be surprised if Quez Watkins knew who Danny Watkins was.
Exactly right.
I hope to find out. Yeah.
No, you guys only had 35 minutes yesterday, and sometimes the guys go off on long answers and the like. The running back situation never came up. Contractually, the way that they were used over the course of the year. Do we see a major change in the Eagle running back situation, Zach, or is it going to be the same 4 guys and just trying to figure out how to best fit them? Contracts are up. Contract decisions need to be made on certain guys like Miles. How do you think running back plays this offseason?
Yeah, Miles Sanders is eligible for a contract extension. I'm not sure he's going to get the type of deal that he might want as far as an extension this offseason. It would surprise me at this point if that occurs. You have Sanders, you have Gainwell back, you have Boston Scott back. I could see them drafting a running back. That's a position where you should add a player on a rookie contract every year to fill that depth chart. That's probably the path they would go more than Jordan Howard. But, if Jordan Howard's back, it would be on a similar deal to this year where it's a veteran, a vet minimum type. But I would expect, for the most part, that group those guys to remain the same, and then add a rookie in there into the mix. But it would surprise me if they made a high-profile move at that position.
Okay, Zach, I know you got to run pretty quickly here, so I want to get, and everybody read Zach and Bo Wolf, by the way, friend of the show as well, at The Athletic. Congratulations on your new corporate overlords. I want to say that as well.
Thank you.
New York Times, but you put it's mock draft season.
Yep.
So I think most of us probably, and I think you'd be in that category, ultimately think the Eagles probably won't take all 3 of those spots. But right now it's 15, 16, 19. I like what you have. Center from Iowa, which Jody doesn't like, but Jason Kelsey might retire. Cornerback and edge rusher. Edge rusher especially makes a lot of sense for me. Is Jerry Robinson going to be popping champagne as the only off-ball linebacker drafted since 1979 again? Or does his coaching staff change the philosophy? Will they consider a playmaking linebacker in the first round of this draft?
Well, so a quick clarification, that mock draft, that was from the Athletic's Dane Brugler. And
okay, sorry.
We were analyzing it. So I'm not sure they would go the center in the first round, but, if they think he's a all-pro type player, that changes the conversation. As far as the linebacker, I wouldn't rule it out because of the volume of picks. I expect the Eagles to trade back at least one of those picks. So maybe that's trading to the bottom of the first round. Maybe that's trading out of the first round entirely. But I do think that if the Eagles saw a guy, whether it's Nakobe Dean, whether it's Devin Lloyd, and they're on the clock and he's on the board, and they think this guy can be an 8-10 year starter for you, and there aren't that many 8-10 year starters anymore anyways. Yeah. But I don't think the positional value will prohibit them from taking it. That said, if there's an edge rusher and a corner on the board that they like, they'll take the edge rusher and the corner every single time. And I don't expect that to change. It would really surprise me if they're on the clock and you have a dynamic linebacker and you have a high upside edge rusher, and they don't take the high upside edge rusher. They're good. They will come out of this first round with a D lineman and a defensive back in some variety. And then I can't tell you what the third one's going to be, but I'd be fairly confident that there will be a D lineman and a defensive back taken.
All right. Last thing, we know we got to let you go. I'm going to predict right here. There's a party going on in this room in our backdrop. Now I need to know, what's the big red book over your left shoulder?
Red book over my left shoulder, which
that's your right shoulder. Go to your left shoulder.
This one here.
Yes.
Playing for Keeps by David Halberstam. That's a Michael Jordan book. It's one of my favorites.
Very nice. Halberstam can write.
I could go through every one of these books for you, but my favorite one is Underdogs, the Philadelphia Eagles.
I just happen to have that one handy. You're very good. What's the name of that book again? One more time, Zach?
Underdogs, the Philadelphia Eagles' emotional road to Super Bowl victory. And it's
very nice.
For this offseason,
Amazon, you can get it all your better bookstores and the like, I'm assuming.
Exactly. And you can see how they put together that Super Bowl roster. So if you're interested in roster construction this year, there's a lot of behind the scenes of that year's team in here.
Got any book signings coming up, Zach?
Not scheduled, but if you get in touch with me, I'm happy to send you a copy.
Zach, good stuff. Appreciate you coming on board. You know, we're going to tap into you plenty during the offseason.
Absolutely.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
That is Zach Berman here with us on Birds 365. All right, a little long because Zach needed to do it early today, so we need to get our first break in. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. You're listening to Birds 365.